Hi, my name is Laurel Bronze, and you're watching We're All Addicted to Something. This is a presentation that I created to explore using essential oils to shift addictive patterns in the physical, emotional, and spiritual body. And if you haven't already watched the first three sections, I highly encourage you to do so. You can find them on my website, essentialoilsforaddiction.com. And I would love to hear from you. You can drop me a line at essentialoilsofbend@gmail.com. And again, please do share this with friends, family, loved ones, or anyone else you think could benefit from some of these messages. So now we're going to dive into one of my favorite topics, the spiritual solution for addiction. And this is, the spiritual aspect is one of the more difficult ones to quantify. So it's really best explained in more of a qualitative manner. So we're going to really stick with story and history instead of science. We're going to take this from a very socio-psychological perspective. So how we relate to ourselves and how we relate to society. And if neither of those are fulfilling, it's very easy to see how we would seek escape. So part of this is that dissatisfaction is just part of the human experience. So we're going to get into how we can use essential oils to really open up some of our spiritual channels and our connections with something bigger than ourselves. And one of the reasons this topic is so dear to my heart is because I considered myself a pantheist for most of my life. I got a lot of my connection to something bigger than myself through experiencing nature, and I really did believe, that there was something out there. And then I got into a really bad accident. I got hit by a car, and it really broke my sense of spirituality. I'm like, how could a God let this happen to me? And that was one of the reasons for my eventual downward spiral. So I do feel very grateful for my recovery in the sense that it's really helped me to reawaken that and to get very curious about all different kinds of approaches to spirituality and different religions. So there are so many different approaches and definitions. And so to really answer the question, what is spirituality? It's a difficult one, but some commonalities we have. It's a sense of connection to something bigger than ourselves, a search for a meaning in life, and oftentimes characterized by transcendent or sacred experiences. So a deep sense of being alive or connected. And in this model, addiction is seeking spiritual connection. And essential oils can absolutely help to open those spiritual channels. So addictions are really just an outside solution for joy, inner peace, and escape. And going back to this idea of, this dissatisfaction is just part of the human experience. We have this inherent insatiability and dissatisfaction with life, and no other animal questions their purpose in life. And it creates a void where we have more questions than we do answers. And we live in a time where we've really lost our daily ritual of religion and our tribal sense of belonging. And marketers play into this dissatisfaction, and they really do promise fulfillment and completion and self-actualization through consumption. And there's this hedonic line of consumerism where when good things happen, I'll just read the Dan Harris quote, when good things happen, we back them very quickly into our baseline expectations, and yet the primordial void goes unfulfilled. So this is the idea that the more we consume, the more we desire. And I wanted to bring back the homeostatic and allostatic line here just to draw the parallel. Like, it's fascinating how, for a lot of our lives, it can really work. this whole cycle of consumption where, we're collecting a house, we're getting a husband, we're having these kids, our career is advancing. And then at some point, usually the dam does break, and we don't have good systems and rituals in place in our society to help people through that transition where those things are no longer satisfying. And a lot of people would argue, that the solution here is a spiritual one and a creative one. And unfortunately, we have a really kind of derisive attitude about the midlife crisis. And really all it is, in a lot of senses, is it's a hunger to try to get back to that buzz of our youth when, acquiring a woman, getting a, red convertible sports car or something actually did give you this real high. And so the question here, it's a beautiful question, is what else can we do that is going to be satisfying? So, we also live in a really narcissistic time where we're very much encouraged to over-identify with our persona. And this really keeps us separate from others. We're in this kind of constant state of trying to seek acknowledgement and approval. And it's really just another whole void that can never be fulfilled. And social media really panders to this. It allows us to have this very edited version of ourselves that we project out there, and to constantly be seeing, if people approve of that projected self. And, a result of all of this is we're very much conditioned, not to go in. We're always kind of looking out, and that's where addiction essentially comes from. And why I'm so passionate about this topic specifically is really to give people a broad sense of how addiction is not just it's not just about substances and certain behaviors. It's really widespread through how our society is coping right now. So now I get to talk about Carl Jung, and I love him so much. He is definitely one of my heroes, and a lot of his work is a place that I can always go if I'm just looking for an interesting perspective on the world. And he is really to be credited for establishing the idea of the spiritual solution for addiction recovery. And he is credited for that in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'll get into that history later. But fascinating guy. I'm going to tell you a little bit about where this came from. So he was always highly intellectual. He spent a lot of time by himself as a kid, and had this unique understanding, that he, even at age 14, that he had two separate selves. So like this inner self that was sometimes affected by the subconscious, and sometimes it was just conscious, and then this outer projected ego self persona. So he was visiting some relatives, and they had a distillery, and he got into it, and this was his quote, he got gloriously and triumphantly drunk. So caution and timidity were gone, and the earth and sky, the universe, and everything in it that creeps and flies, revolves, rises or falls, had all become one. And there was no longer any inside or outside, no longer an I and others. There was no number two and number one. So, Jung really understood the psychological function of drugs in a different way from other psychoanalytic writers of his time. So it's not just changing mood, so it's not just calming you or stimulating you, but it's actually changing what happens in the inner world. So this means that we're not simply like masking our psychological distress, but we're actually removing the cause of it for the time being. So these substances are working at this deep psychic level of functioning and really blurring the boundaries of the inner and outer world. And so he understood that once somebody experienced this state of wholeness, that they may well want to experience it again and again and again. And, obviously he understood that it was an illusory wholeness, and that it would dissolve when someone sobers up, but it was an experience that would be very difficult to give up. So he really understood that on an intuitive level, that only a radical conversion to something that's equally as satisfying to the individual on a deep level could promote recovery. And I also just want to say something else that is really beautiful and incredible about him. He had a very, very empathetic view of humanity. He experienced a lot of intense loneliness himself as a kid, spent a lot of time just wandering the pastures and forests by his house. And he really sensed the intense loneliness that's forced upon addicts through the shame and secrecy of their addiction. And he described it. And again, remember back to that first section when we're talking about the addict as the other. He described it as the addicted person being outside the protective wall of the human community. So pretty intense stuff. So Carl Jung was essential to the foundation of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it was this interesting play of circumstances that happened. He had a patient named Roland H., who was this very well-to-do American, well-bred, Ivy League educated, and he was having a hell of a time with alcoholism. And he ran through a bunch of psychologists in the States, and finally he's like, oh God, maybe Carl Jung can help me. So he goes to Switzerland. And Carl Jung does help him, and then there's a number of times when he was able to become sober and have some prolonged abstinence, but once again he relapsed and came back to Switzerland. And Carl Jung essentially fired him and told him that he was hopeless, and he really didn't think that there was any way he was ever going to recover from this, but that he had maybe seen some people who had had this genuine spiritual conversion, that might actually work. So Roland H. went back to the States and took his advice seriously and became a part of this church called the Oxford Group, which had this system, or if you will call it steps, to really help people find true spirituality within themselves. And part of these steps were actually taken from old Vedic texts from India and old yogic texts, and they became the foundation for the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. So Roland H. Eventually enrolled one of his friends in the Oxford Group, who eventually brought Bill W. into it. And Bill Wilson, was the founder, and he really saw the power in entering into that process of the steps. So he began this correspondence with Carl Jung, and this is one of the letters that Carl Jung wrote back, and he's talking about Roland H. here. So he said his craving for alcohol was the equivalent on a low level of the spiritual thirst for our being for wholeness, expressed in medieval language, the union with God. And you see, alcohol in Latin is spiritus, and you use the same word for the highest religious experience as well as for the most depraving poison. So the helpful formula, therefore, is spiritus contra spiritum. So in Carl Jung's viewpoint, the spiritual solution is really a uniting of the true self, which does involve some of the unconscious, and the unconscious that's haunting us perhaps, our true self, who we believe ourselves to really be, the ego, the persona self that we project out, how we want other people to see us, and then also God in the universe. And there's a lot of religious perspectives out there that have like more of a non-dual attitude about God, that God is in everybody and in everything. So this is Carl Jung's idea of a spiritual solution. And here is just a basic, so you can get kind of an idea of what the 12-step model is. And some of it kind of coincidentally follows some of Jung's psychoanalytic model of the confronting of the shadow. And a lot of it, if there's any yogis out there, you'll definitely see some parallels with the sutras. So in the beginning, there's this confession, surrender, and really truth sinking. So, how is my engagement in this behavior or my use of the substance, how is it really affecting my life? When you really just cut out all the BS. And then the process of confronting the shadow, so the darkness that lives within us that we tend to project out onto other people, and the process of cleaning up our past and making genuine apologies to people, that's the amends. And then this idea of non-separateness, so really creating some fellowship with other people, possibly through service, possibly within a 12-step organization. But the essential part of this is, in our addiction, our ego gets like super inflamed, and we really want to believe that we're different than everybody else. And that creates this, what they call in some recovery communities, this terminal uniqueness, where the person is really trapped. If we think about that, that spectrum, they're really trapped in that place where they're like, oh, well, I'm not so far gone that I want to be a part of this addiction 12-step program or anything else. But, well, I know that I'm not using in a way that's like everybody else, and they just feel they get more and more and more isolated. So this is the idea of breaking down those walls and realizing that, we have a lot more in common with everybody else than we have differences. And the 12-step program highly encourages meditation, and they call it like the conscious contact with God. They use the word God sometimes, but, with spirit or higher power or the universe or nature. And, I personally believe if yoga was as widespread as it is now, that it would have been part of the model. And I think a lot of other people believe that to be true too. And that's why so many people are interested in promoting it as just one other tool to really help us gain long-term recovery. So, Alcoholics Anonymous, it's free and it's established. It can be a really great place to just go and hear some recovery messages early on. But I am a big proponent of the idea that there are many paths up the mountain. And if that's not resonating, coming at this from a different angle, I highly encourage you to do it, because there are so many other ways to recover. There are some just people doing such awesome work out there. Recovery 2.0, that's Tommy Rosen. He has some great free videos on his site, that in a wonderful book that he's written just to kind of get you engaged. He has a very postmodern perspective and very promoting of nutrition and exercise and everything else. I've studied both with Durga Leila of Yoga of Recovery and Nikki Myers of Yoga of 12-Step Recovery. And they both have, a strong belief that we really can use not only our asana practice, that's the physical practice, but also so many of the ideas in yoga philosophy to really help encourage our recovery. And then Integral Recovery, that's John Dupy. He has a beautiful book. Get your hands on it. And he is a big advocate of binaural meditation. So I talk a lot more about that on my website. So do visit it. There's a lot more information about how to get in touch with all of these people and start taking some of their classes. A woman that created Hip Sobriety, she has a whole school, and she's the only one of all of these that's like kind of anti-AA, but she's absolutely a huge advocate of doing a lot of personal work and really figuring out where these emotions are in our body and how to free ourselves. And she is also a Kundalini yoga instructor, so I know that she definitely sees the value in the spiritual aspect of recovery. So essential oils to open spiritual channels. Oh, this is so much fun. Frankincense. Well, we all know the story of baby Jesus. So, for thousands and thousands of years, it has been known as a very prized and precious essential oil. So it has the notoriety in the New Testament, but also the Babylonians and the Assyrians would burn it in religious ceremonies, and the ancient Egyptians used it for everything from perfume to soothing the skin. So it's really helpful for enhancing prayer and meditation, and it opens spiritual channels. And for those of you out there who really need some science behind this, frankincense does penetrate the blood-brain barrier and can stimulate the pineal gland. So that's also one of the reasons that it works so well for opening all that up. Myrrh is a beautiful oil. It's a really maternal and gentle oil. So a lot of times if we're dealing with some childhood traumas that centered around not feeling connected with our mothers, this can be a great way to bring in some maternal energy. Helichrysum is known as the oil of pain. And so it has a powerful relationship with light and imbues joy and hope. There's a beautiful story behind it. doTERRA sources it from Corsica, from plants that are wildcrafted there, and they only use the yellow flowering top. So it comes from the small perennial herb that has these narrow silver leaves, and the flowers have this beautiful gold-shaped blossom. And it's called Helichrysum because that means golden sun in Greek. Melissa is the oil of light, so another oil that's really gonna imbue lightness and truth. This is a very powerful one for really releasing everything and anything that's holding us back from reaching our full potential. So it excites the joy of living, and it really does have an intense light and high vibration. So I definitely encourage using this one, and be prepared for its effects. It's an intense one. Roman chamomile, I mentioned that a little bit in talking about the Serenity blend, but this is a very calming oil. We already know we can use chamomile to help us fall asleep, but it has a way of also softening the personality and the overactive ego mind. And our addictions have a way of really giving the ego all the power, and that's the place where we're protecting the addiction. We're really coming up with story after story after story of how we're in the right and everybody else is in the wrong, and how we're perfectly fine and they're all crazy. So this can really help to sort of start to shed some of those meaningless stories that really consume our lives and prevent us from reaching our full potential. So, and then last, we're going to talk about sandalwood, which is really a devotional oil. So if you are somebody that engages in more devotional practices as part of your spirituality, if it's something that you're open to, this can really help support that. So preparing the spirit to commune with God, and it really helps support having a more humble perspective on the self. So where do we start with all of this? This has been a lot of information, and I so appreciate you coming on this journey with me. Real transformation begins when you embrace your problems as agents for growth. And if you didn't watch the first video, I talked a lot about my story of addiction. I drank a bottle of wine a night for about 15 years, sometimes more, sometimes less. Absolutely caused a lot of problems in my life. And I feel very grateful for having had that experience and now being able to be where I am today. And one of the best ways to describe it is, especially towards the end, I was always just trying to get to a place where I just felt like okay. And now I feel okay almost all the time. And so it's kind of like, I wouldn't say it's as good as feeling drunk all the time, but it definitely, I feel a sense of being uplifted and at peace all the time. And that is, I have a lot of gratitude for that. So here's just some ideas for having a DIY rehab. There's a lot of conflicting information out there on the internet. Rehab is a huge industry right now. There is so much money to be made. Even like the cheapest rehab is like $20,000 a month. And it's all over the map in terms of the kind of care that you're going to get. And so, unless you're really into that acute place of addiction where you're waking up with the shakes and and you're sweating, or if it's a different drug that you're doing where you just are absolutely 100% compelled to be doing it all the time, and you're in this 24/7 type of relationship, I would encourage at least trying this idea of a DIY rehab yourself, and seeing what kind of progress that you can make and different angles that you can take. So one thing that would be really helpful is to have some strong and sober allies. Do you know anybody who is successfully recovered from addiction? So, not just somebody who, say, for religious reasons or because they don't like the taste, like doesn't drink, but someone who's actually been down in the trenches and knows what it's like and knows how to climb out. Can be really helpful. And if you have a partner that is willing to support you in this, having them also enter into the process of recovery can be really helpful, so that they start to examine, okay, what is my relationship with this substance? Why do I always come home from work and have 2 glasses of wine? Maybe they're not passing out, but maybe they do have still an addictive relationship with it, and it will really increase the understanding. I will say that it can be quite challenging to be living with somebody who does have a pretty strong addictive habit, and that could also manifest as like codependency, etc. But these systems, they're all so closely aligned. And once again, the addict is not the other. So if you are somebody that's really trying to help somebody else, the more that you can position yourself as somebody that's also trying to dissect their own addictive behaviors, the more inroads that you're going to make. It's when and this has happened to me, when people are sitting there drinking a gin and tonic and telling me that I have a problem with drinking, it's a very conflicted message, and it's really hard to take seriously. So, strong and sober allies, a professional counselor with expertise in addiction. So this is really important, not just a professional counselor, but someone who actually understands the 12 steps and really understands the toolbox. They can help you lay a foundation for how you're going to deal with triggers and stuff. Another one, a willingness to do personal work, some excavation, possibly, reading the big book, doing some of the steps, perhaps. A willingness to connect with the sober community, whatever that looks like to you. There are some really strong communities that happen now in yoga studios, and they have really great programs. Even if, say, you're poverty stricken, there's a lot of studios that offer a karma program where you can go and clean the studio and get free yoga. And that could be a way, where at first you might have to do, 2-3 classes a day to, really help to detox the body and the mind. And it can really get you connected with some healthy people. Meditation groups. I find, the more and more I do this like spiritual exploration, the more I find a lot of sober people in like these meditation groups or, kirtan, etc. And, I think it really is, again, it's that spiritual seeking. So, and then also if you're open to it, 12-step meetings just can be a wonderfully warm and inviting place. And not all meetings are created equal. Usually most towns will have one that's kind of cool though. And it's, if nothing else, you can always just go and sit in the back and see if you can get anything out of it and possibly make some friends. It's the more allies that you can have, the more phone numbers you can have in your phone, people that you can call to help you when you're feeling super triggered, the better. And then again, diet and exercise. I'm not going to get into this a ton, but it's so important that we really nourish our bodies and really take care of them and support all the different systems that we need to build those neurochemicals that are going to make us feel good in a natural way. So green vegetables is a big one, green smoothies, and then exercise and sweating. So the lifestyle shift, it can be a real sideways approach to dealing with addiction. If you don't want to walk into an AA meeting and sit down and say you're alcoholic, well, there's other things that you can do. You can start to create a lifestyle where it doesn't make sense to use and create a strong commitment to your health and really start to see, are my actions in line with my values? See if you can get a couple of sober days under your belt. And that detoxification of the mind and the body and the spirit can really start to help create like a pros and cons list that has some reality to it of like, well, what is this really doing for me? Like, how is it helping me? What's good about it? What's bad about it? And I can't emphasize enough plant medicine, essential oils, using natural products, detoxifying your house. These oils, they are powerful and they provide physical, emotional, and spiritual support on your path to recovery. And we need all the tools that we can get. So I would highly suggest starting here. This is a kit that is about mid-range. doTERRA has a system where if you want a wholesale membership, so as I've talked about on some other videos, if you buy right from my retail website, I make 25% off that. But if you get your own wholesale account, you get everything for 25% off. And if you buy some of the kits, which you can see those on my website, they'll waive the membership fee and you start at that 25% off and you get points over time that helps you get more stuff for free. So you're really just setting up a system where you can get these super high quality products for cheaper than you would buy some of the crap in the grocery store. So this first kit has a bunch of the oils that we talked about during this presentation, including a full bottle of frankincense. It also has balance in there and lavender and peppermint and On Guard and lemon. And it has a diffuser and you're going to get the supplements. So right away you can start with those. And then some of the On Guard products. So the toothpaste, the hand soap, and then you can try the shampoo and conditioner, and you might be really interested in trying their skincare line if you want to move away from some of the toxic skincare stuff that you've been using. And then I have built this whole list of suggestions that's on my website. I'm going to talk a little bit about it now, but every month you can really start to build your collection of things that are going to help support your recovery. So I can't emphasize enough, again, the Serenity. It's incredible. Please do get your hands on a bottle of the oil and the Restful Complex, because that will absolutely help you sleep, and it's so important to sleep. And then the supplements, I talked a lot about those in the physical recovery section, and I have a whole separate class on that. So if you want to learn more about those, please go to my website, but we need to nourish our bodies. And then month 2, you can collect all the citrus oils, and that's really helping with our mood. You can get on the 3rd month, the aromatherapy kit. We talked a lot about those oils. And then the 4th month, you can do this whole process of detoxifying your house and, that decluttering process that we talked about by, replacing all the doTERRA cleaner. You can replace all the cleaners with that. And you can get the toothpaste, and hopefully you'll already have the hand soap. And then the 5th month, you can get all the spiritual oil collection. I highly recommend actually that you get frankincense earlier because of how powerful it is. And on and on. These are the serotonin boosters that we talked about: clary sage, cedarwood, and eucalyptus. So I highly encourage you to get a wholesale account. Again, if you really don't want to, I would love your support. If you want to buy retail off my website, mydoterra.com/essential oils of Bend. But if you do want your own account and you can get wholesale prices, the best way you can get the most out of your membership by ordering 125 PV, that's another way of saying doTERRA dollars, basically, and you get the free oil of the month. And this is a really cool way to begin to explore different oils and try them out. And then definitely at least 50 a month, because I don't want to get into the complicated process, but if you're ordering 50 a month, you're building points over time. And so eventually at a year, you'll actually be getting, with your 25% wholesale discount, you'll be getting up to 55% off every order with the points that you get back. And so again, I'm just emphasizing it's really not hard to spend 125 PV a month when you think about the whole lifestyle shift that's going to happen if you get new skincare products, the whole On Guard cleaner line, and then the oils, that you're going to be building month by month and trying them out, seeing what works for you emotionally. And there's so many different oils that support physical health as well, like that are immune boosting, that can help with your respiratory system. And we didn't even get into that. And that's a whole other huge world that I would be happy to talk to you more about. And I did also want to talk about the oils as this amazing sober business opportunity. So in the first video, I talked about how, I spent 10 years of my life working at this kayak shop as the marketing director, and it was so much fun. And it was really booze fueled too, We spent a lot of time out on the water, drinking and going on these river trips. And the 10 years before that, I was a full-time professional musician and touring all around the country. And I had to be the host of the party every night, so there was a lot of drinking there. And I knew in my heart when I came back from rehab that I really needed to find something that was going to support my recovery. And even though I knew I was strong enough to still exist in that partying atmosphere at the kayak shop, I knew that by embracing the oils as a business, this was really going to help my move towards a healthier lifestyle and really help open the door to all kinds of opportunities for learning about natural health care. So a couple of things that I like so much about it in terms of how it supports my recovery is that I spend a lot of high quality time one-on-one or in class settings with people talking about their health and their emotional stability. What do they really have going on in their life? So immediately we're getting into a very authentic conversation. And that is something that just feels more and more important to me, like on this road of recovery, that I'm cutting out a lot of the BS and really getting down to how to help people. And so I love that it really gives me an excuse to care about people on a whole other level, connect on an authentic way. And, one other side note, the founders of this company are Mormons and they're sober. And, whatever your feelings are about that, I do think that there is something to be said for just the integrity of which they approach this business. It's almost uncanny. I mean, they are doing radical work in developing countries to make sure that people are not only not exploited, but they're actually, their quality of life is really raising as a result of doTERRA working there. So that's something that just makes my heart feel really good. So please do, again, visit my website, essentialoilsforaddiction.com. I so appreciate you watching my video series. And if you have not, please do go back and watch the introduction and part 1 and 2, where we explore the physical and emotional aspects. And you can find those videos on my Essential Oils for Addiction.com website. And if you'd like to buy your oils retail, which a lot of people are commitment phobes, I totally get that. And I would love your support. Thank you. If you want to buy them from my website, which is mydoterra.com/essential oils of Bend. And my wellness advocate number is 276-7718. Please do be in touch with me, essentialoilsofbend@gmail.com. Again, my name's Laurel. And I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to give this talk live in as many venues as I can. I'm super excited about this topic, and I really do think that the oils can just be one more thing that really can help us support our recovery. You know, and to conclude about addiction, you know, there's really not just one place that we can point and say, you know, that's it. That's where addiction lives. Oh, it lives in the brain and that chemistry that's happening up there. Or, oh, it lives in the trauma that you experienced. Or, oh, it lives in the place because you're disconnected with spirituality. It is really, it's a holistic process. And that's why I wanted to bring in all these three aspects and the ways in which the oils integrate so well into that. And it's been so much fun putting this together. I really appreciate your attention. Again, my name is Laurel Bronze, and don't hesitate to reach out.